Okay, you've probably either used or heard us talking about Hospitable, but do you know the wild origin story behind it? Well, today we're talking to their founder and CEO.
I would like to go back to doing something else, but first I want to automate this little Airbnb operation. It turns out basically 8 years later, I'm still into this.
Pierre-Camille Hamana is not just building tech, he's building trust, one feature at a time.
So the idea is you could connect to a Hospitable smart B&B then at a time without having any kind of PMS integration or PMS connectivity.
Hospitable has quietly become one of the most influential companies in short-term rentals, powering the operations of tens of thousands of listings, including ours, and the roadmap only gets bolder from here.
The opportunity of direct is that we have to build an entire booking engine suite, and we have the immense privilege of actually being paid for it, whereas this is completely expected as a feature set for more mature.
My name is Jason Muth. I'm a 31-time Airbnb superhost. I worked in the media business for my whole career, over 25 years, and in 2016, we launched our first short-term rental, and that world is now our chapter 2. Since then, we've welcomed over 5,000 guests and their furry friends to our homes. And now we're here to show you how to create a smart stay. Now, on with the show. All right, we are super excited to have you on the podcast, Pierre-Camille Hamana from Hospitable, the CEO and founder. Did I get the title correct?
Yeah, founder and CEO and founder. That's pretty much the right thing there. Thank you, Jason, for having me. And thank you, Jason and Rory, for having me today.
We've been Hospitable users, as we've mentioned on this podcast many, many times. We've been users for almost 3 years at this point, and it's the only property management software that we use from day one. I think that I love the user interface. This is back when we had 5 properties that we owned, and now we have over 20-something properties that were owned and co-host on the platform. It's scaled really well with us. This is certainly not a Hospitable commercial, and it's certainly not a Hospitable. It's a bit of an ode to Hospitable because we're like super fans of what you guys are doing. But before we hit record, Pierre-Camille, or is it PC as you want me to call you, right? Because we're all casual here. You did remind me that I lit you up a little bit on Facebook, in a comment. So we'll have to talk about that on this podcast. But big welcome to Smart Stay Show.
Thank you so very much, and yeah, thank you for being a loyal, Hospitable customers, both of you. And definitely, I think in the past few years, you may have seen a lot of changes in the products, in the features that we deliver. So yeah, thank you so much, and looking forward to the next question.
So, for those of us who were working in the short-term rental space, your company and your product are pretty central to a lot of how we operate things. But, that's in hindsight to the whole process. Can you talk a little bit about what got you into this space in the first place? You have a little bit of a legal background, but you've really found a segment of the market that needed your help, and you built a product that worked for that, and you've kind of become the primary company that supports short-term rentals. So can you explain a little bit about what got you in the space in the first place, and a little bit of your story of how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you for that, Rory. That was a complete accident. Like I think many in the short-term rental industry, there is no short-term rental school, or at least that I'm aware of, except basically some kind of a life story that basically gets you into that. So yeah, as you're right, I used to have a tentative career as an attorney that actually never come to fruition. I wanted to. I've been coding basically ever since I'm the age of 13. So PHP was just the only thing that existed at this time. I feel there was also just the beginning of WordPress, for example. So there was always this part on software development that I was feeling pretty passionate about. Turns out I ended up in law school because there was also an accident on my side, is that I ended up in a university and entering into a class, decided and found, that's actually interesting. I'm very curious about it. And basically that's where I spent 8 years of my life. Then it came time for me to look for an associate position. And I thought, hey, you know what? I'm poor. I don't have a girlfriend. I have plenty of time. Either I basically apply for a job and then I would feel, resentful. I would have regrets of not exploring building my own startup at this point. Actually, I do the thing. So I did the thing. It lasted 3 months. It completely collapsed very quickly. And then something happened. My housemate left. a house, and then I ended up having a very big house and just no one to fit it in or pay the bills. And it was just around 2000, I want to say 14. And so that's basically where Airbnb was really particularly booming in Europe, the good old days. And so I started skilling Airbnb, hosting guests in one private room and one couch, and hosted like 500 different people in 18 months under that setup. So I have a lot of respect for property managers that have managed more than one private room, which is really the lowest possible setting you can have, because for me that felt like already quite a lot of work, quite a lot of repetition between messages. And so I thought, you know what, after a bit of time, I would like to go back to doing something else, but first I want to automate this little Airbnb operation. It turns out basically 8 years later, I'm still into this little thing. I'm not sure what the next thing is going to be, but that ended up being Hospitable. And so first and foremost, it was all about sending the messages on my behalf for all the guests that I would be welcoming, sending the right check-in instructions, answering all their questions without me having to lift a finger. And that came obviously with a lot of stories. Like obviously I made mistakes about first names, last names, about dates, communicated with guests that created more confusion than not. So I felt like really for me to solve this problem technically, rather than having me to copy and paste from my phone's notes application.
I did so much copying and pasting in our early days doing this. We first started hosting in 2016, and we launched with Hospitable in 2022. And those first 6 years, we were the weekend warriors, right? Where, I had a full-time job and I get up famously early and, I'm sending out my PDFs and my copy paste messages through email, back then, until I realized that everything should go through the message thread for whatever, booking channel, property management channel that we were using. And then I realized that a lot of this could get automated and that the solution was already there. And, whether it was Hospitable or different property management software, there were people that could help automate some of these things where you still have a personal touch. What fascinates me is that there are these big companies like Airbnb and Verbo and Booking.com that are out there, but you still identified a need to either integrate these things or avoid that those softwares didn't quite provide, and you went out there and did your own thing, right? How did they take to it, right? So there are these big technology companies that are booking engines, and there's a startup company like yourself that is looking to sit on top of it. Was that an easy conversation or an easy integration? Nothing's easy, but how did that come about?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jason. That was not an easy thing, especially because since its inception, the idea was we didn't want to be the kind of enterprisey software application that existed already. So it was a bit of a battle, but just to zoom out and basically explain a bit of a perspective, I'm absolutely clueless about the short-term rental industry. I have literally no hesitation in bringing it. I've discovered it from the perspective of the host. I didn't do any comprehensive business research or competitive analysis when it was about launching. It was really about solving my own problem. So much so that actually the first property management customer that had told me that, no, actually you have property management software, there is another category with already established vendors, or in any case growing really fast with tens of millions in funding. And I discovered that really as clueless as one could be. My original idea was that I'm a host. I'm literally the smallest host there could be with just one private room. And I don't have a comprehensive, a software solution that actually helps me fix my very pain point. It always seems to be very distant or focused on distribution or some kind of other feature that I don't care about yet, but I have my pain point now and I need to have a problem by dinner, because otherwise my girlfriend is going to tell me, why are you spending so much time on this app rather than paying attention to me? And that's fair, very fair, very fair thing. That's really what drove me, I think, a lot of that at that point in time. And so the idea is you could connect to Hospitable, Smart B&B then at the time, without having any kind of PMS integration or PMS connectivity, which was probably not even developed for a few months before launch. So there was a lot of, let's call it a little bit of hacking behind the scenes to be able to secure access to those APIs and be able to impersonate users about it. And that was actually pretty much the rule in the industry at that point in time. Because there was no other way to be integrating that would be offered by those booking channels, those booking platforms, especially so if you're talking about the consideration of the now 5 million hosts that have less than 7 properties and may not see a very compelling need for a property management software and still maybe don't. The attitude from those booking platforms has really been varied. There's an entire spectrum of it. We have some that are pretty inflexible about this is the way, and that's it. We have some that felt, actually, you're making a good point, is that there should be a software solution for the host, not just for the property management companies of the world that we probably have a bigger inventory, but there is actually pretty much a great business case to make on the lifetime value of those hosts. If we have a great software, if we partner with great software that actually can allow our hosts to be staying a little bit longer on our platform, then we generate more revenue at literally no cost. And there are some that even would take a completely dismissive approach, I would say, to basically, we don't want to integrate with people because you're not a serious company if you don't work with if you are not focused on working with property management companies. Even like the lingo, everything, the culture was entirely geared towards, if you don't have operators with 1,000 properties, we don't even want to talk to you guys. Which I think in insight, there has been a lot of evolution on those booking platforms, probably more geared towards what we wanted, or we wanted the industry to change towards. So that's really a better ease of use, a better democratization of software, not reserved to the elite, but actually to anyone that feel like they have a problem and would like to test out a solution, and a more modular approach that actually allows to diminish the risk of a connection. So that in the beginning, for example, a few years ago, not even in the beginning, but that would be going back a long time, but you remember you need to lose your reviews, you need to recreate your entire listings, you could not integrate with messaging. There were a lot of things that were not optimized for really mass adoption for millions of hosts. And now I think overall, across all booking channels, we're really seeing that trend of, we want to offer an integrated solution, to offer for software providers to build an integrated solution that should be accessible and easy enough to use for the host themselves, not people that are on payroll to be setting up and implementing those property management software.
Rory, I'm going to let you ask the follow-up, but let me just point out one thing you said early on there, in that you started this company when you had no girlfriend, and then you got the girlfriend, and then you were working too hard, and she was saying, "Pay attention to me," right? Is that still what's happening?
Well, I'm a single dad now, but that's another story.
That's a whole other story. All right, Rory, what kind of follow-up do you want to ask to that, and how this business has developed for PC?
Well, I mean, it's fascinating to hear, how the idea came about, how you were able to integrate it with the booking platforms and really kind of build that, because that alone is a monumental challenge. But then once you've come up with a system, how did you market and get the word out to hosts? I mean, your market of hosts it's a global market, so it's not something local. You can't go out and shake everybody's hands and sell the product. How were you able to break out and kind of become worldwide known for short-term rental hosts?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm worldwide known. I do believe that we don't yet have a go-to-market strategy that's really 100% compelling that I could talk to you and properly brag about. But I think it's quite interesting on the marketing side, is that how it was at the very start is kind of what we're rebuilding right now. The thing that really launched Hospitable at the time was really the communities and the forums that were existing, and where people would come to share their concerns, their problems about hosting, about reviews. Typically, every little forum has this kind of section where I have bad guests. Here is what they've done. Here is what they did. Please tell me how I can draft a great review or not so great review for this, to review this day. And we're actually right now, what we are gearing towards and what we're working on right now is really building this kind of community across hosts, whether they are hospitable users or not. And so one of the things that Jason was talking about, like we've been exchanging a few words over a Facebook group, is basically just a prototype of that real vision. So I think there is a lot of community around an online community, really around short-term rental hosts, because it's pretty lonely. You don't have friends or other people that know the challenges that you're going through. So you're going to where everybody goes when they are looking for help right now, and that's basically going to be the internet, surprisingly so. And that's when you're receiving advice, some qualified, some less so, to basically be able to help you on your lonely short-term rental host journey. But you're right, it's something that we are still struggling with. You don't have a lot of events that are geared towards property owners, self-managers, I would love to call them. So one other thing that we've done, for example, is rather than organizing a big event where people fly to, we actually have a roadshow. And so that was the case last year in the US. We're still doing that. So for example, we have one in a few weeks in London. There was one last week in Auckland. And in Melbourne. So we basically rather have local events where we have a bit of a cluster of users, have them meet, create a good local network, and then invite some other people to this particular event. And it's quite frankly, there's a lot of motivation. It just really is. It's about meeting our customers and face to face, which is really a source of joy. Rather than really going, oh my God, we're going to become a next billion-dollar company because we organize that new event in London. It's really about the opportunity to have those relationships face to face.
Yeah, I gotta say, Hospitable does a remarkable job with this. I mean, the fact that, and we'll get into what you and I were conversing about in the forum, and we hadn't met yet in a little bit, because I do want to talk about direct bookings and how that's evolved a little bit. But I mean, the fact that the CEO of the company is in the user group, commenting back and forth on some posts that are happening, I think is astounding. And one thing that I've really always appreciated is seeing the roadmap for the product and being able to give comments that other people can upvote. And there have been a couple that I think I've posted over the years that when it comes true, or when you decide to do it, I think I get a random comment saying like, hey, your comment that's been upvoted is now on our product roadmap, as a follow-up to the person that made the comment. And, I think hearing hosts and hearing the feedback of your users, it's not perfect, right? I'm sure that everybody has features that they want immediately that doesn't quite fit on the roadmap, just yet. But it seems as though your roadmap is informed by the people who are your customers and who are actually using the product. So I think that's a very interesting way to run the business. And, as somebody that's a user, I appreciate having that feedback. One thing I also should say is your chat support agents, which I think go around the world because they always identify where they live. Their meme game is on point. And I have absolutely laughed out loud at some memes that were sent back to me by the chat agents, specifically when an agent named Jason from the Philippines wrote back to me, and he saw my name was Jason, and I got the Spider-Man meme of all the Spider-Mans pointing at each other, and I just couldn't help but laugh. I mean, it really it humanized the conversation.
There's some strong game with customers as well. So I think we have a Hall of Fame of interactions like that, where you go back with sending new pictures.
Do you want customers to come back with other memes? Like, is that like encouraged?
That's totally okay.
It is totally okay.
Be yourself. That's just the rule.
Does Hospitable have trainings on how agents should be sending memes to us? I mean, that was amazing.
I hope we don't have a policy about it, because that would feel like the death of any entrepreneurship. But I think we have some guidelines. Is you're not gonna go away from it. If there is a big bug, it's not because you're sending a meme that basically the conversation is gonna get any better. First of all, you need to solve the problem. Then you have the chance to basically end the conversation on lighter touch to be memorable. But there is a lot of training though over tone of voice. to make sure that kind of aligns, especially with their customer personas. Which, I mean, the more and more I realize those are really need to be seen as they are CEOs in their own right. They have a very busy life, and they don't have to. I mean, they're very demanding, as they rightly should be, about basically the velocity of our response and the conciseness of a response. That's where, for example, we draw a lot more of the accent these days.
I just have to be careful because, customer service can just go down a bad road, and we're guilty of it too as customers. I mean, we kind of have velocity is a great word for that. We expect quick responses, quick answers to everything. In this world, it's a quick response to a guest that having a problem, or, in my situations that I've chatted about in Facebook groups, it's about direct bookings, and people can instant book on Airbnb, and the instant book feature wasn't quite as polished on the Hospitable platform just yet, though I do realize it is a aggressive work in progress. We've spoken with Abby Gruss, who's in charge, I think one of the product managers or in charge of Direct, also on this podcast. And, Direct is becoming more and more of a component of our business, of other people's businesses. We spoke with Mark Simpson on this podcast, who's big on direct bookings. So, as Direct becomes more and more of a channel for all of us, how has that informed the direction of where you're taking the product for Hospitable?
Yeah, and if that represents a lot more for you, that also represents a lot more for us at Hospitable. So basically about 35% of the business revenue, the Hospitable revenue, is now with direct booking. So the little bit of service fees that we're taking for the payment processing, for the guest verification, the tax compliance, etc., and the insurance. So it's really growing very fast. So I think we almost quadruple in volume in the last 12 months between January and January. So that's really one of the things that we realize is that a lot of reservations are occurring around January. People just met over Christmas, New Year's Eve, and they are eager to book their vacation for spring or the summer together, maybe as a group of friends or family all together. So really Q1 is one of the most important ones for direct bookings, because that's where the vacation rentals I think are getting booked. And we see also like a complete inflation in the value of the reservation. So this is really a great question as well. The opportunity of direct is that we have to build an entire booking engine suite, and we have the immense privilege of actually being paid for it. Whereas this is completely expected as a feature set for more mature property management software, but we're building this with a view of it needs to work on direct. It needs to be a really compelling experience, because we all align on this, and also leveraging the extra capabilities that we have built over time regarding payments, in particular with marketplace payments as well. So, for example, we realized they're really like upsells, rental agreement, security deposit, basically an ID verification that kind of come hand in hand. There is a roadmap that is dictated really by customers' feedback, and also on our side, opportunities, commercial opportunities, and they are all aligned. So we want to do upsells. We want to allow you to secure an early check-in or late check-out. And definitely that's one of the easiest things we can do on direct. We already have your payout details. We can already achieve that. Yeah, sure. But then what about this other thing? Like I want to offer a fruit basket like as an add-on, or I would do groceries for you so that your fridge is full, or I could basically rent you bikes. Okay, but now I need to have an agreement to sign to waive liabilities, to basically make sure we have an understanding of what this means. It's not just about the payments, it's about the rental agreements. Okay, so then what's the next level is, okay, we have those rental agreements. Now, wait, we have money, we have the charge, we have the credit card, we can have a signature. That we need to do the security deposit. That's literally the next thing. It's just you have the signature of a rental agreement, and we can basically keep some money on hold in case a host wants to file a claim against that guest for some minor damages that would have occurred at the occasion of the stay. Yeah, sure, but then then you need to identify who that is, and you need to do that, sure, with a view of having a great experience for direct first, but you also need to do that for all the OTA bookings. So one coming from Airbnb or Booking, and that means you need to have an ID verification that's just about the ID verification, like who is the individual that's basically going to be liable for that particular security deposit. So it's all about using direct as really a playground for building this kind of booking experience that definitely has been built over time by many property management software. But the idea is taking that with a view of making that super easy for a host to use and not having the multiple data entry, like multiple fields that you need to fill as you are a guest coming from Airbnb or Booking.com when you're adding an upsell, for example, on your guest portal. And that's really something that's quite frankly today is not fully built out. But I think it's being built out as we speak. So, for example, we're going to announce a private pilot for security deposit. Rental agreements has taken a bit of a hold because of IT verification, basically taking over the roadmap. So there are all multiple elements in play, all built by the very small direct team. We're very ambitious. So there's just 4 engineers rather than the typical 3 that are building direct all together. And they basically bring a significant revenue multi-times over their pay to a company like Hospitable with the development.
So how have you seen the space change over the years? I mean, like your roadmap today is, I'm guessing it's not what you guessed it was going to look like a couple years ago. It's probably informed by the direction of travel or the direction of the big, online travel agencies. Like what are you surprised that you've kind of run down a road of compared to a couple of years ago when you just launched this thing saying, all right, well, let's do A, B, and C, and I'm not quite sure where X, Y, and Z are going to be, but we'll figure that out along the way.
Yeah, I think when talking about the roadmap or anywhere about building a company, you need to be focused on 2 times that are basically impossible to negotiate: today and 30 years from now. Those are the fixed points. Like, you need to know what you are doing today that basically has the greatest urgency on your business. That may expand to tomorrow, but ideally today it needs to be fixed. And then 30 years from now, you have this kind of mental picture that's pretty blurred of what you're trying to achieve. And so in our case, making it as trivial to start and profitably run a short-term rental. That's kind of the mantra. And it doesn't say anything in particular about what needs to be built, because that is to be found out. But at least you discriminate against everything that doesn't contribute to this particular mission. I think the kind of goals and the milestones that we set them already back in 2021. After COVID, realizing moving up market and building a property management product for property managers is not the entirety of the solution that really excites us to build. Yes, we need to do that too, but that's really is a bit absurd to double down on a market that's a bit crowded, where there is very little differentiation. But actually, one of the things that we have going for us is that we work so well for self-managers that have a job on the side, that are managing their properties remotely, that have less than 7 properties and may not even be worthy enough somehow to be in touch with a sales development representative with one of those big property management software companies that would probably disqualify them as a potential opportunity. So there was definitely direct being a part of this. We knew we wanted to do something about direct bookings after COVID. That is after taking a pretty defensive stance on that. We didn't want to advertise against Booking or against Airbnb, which are very big marketing spenders with Google, for example. I think Booking is the largest spender on Google AdWords. But then we realized actually there is a compelling case. It's about helping not just building websites, but it's actually about handling all the back office tasks that no host is going to be expected to have experience on, and actually the highest risk for them when they go direct. So that's having a process for verifying the identity of your guest. That's having an insurance. That's being able to respect compliance with taxes. Not being, we don't want to be contributing to a situation where hosts will be put in a compliance hell because they would have some kind of audit or liabilities on taxes later. We would rather take that responsibility. We discovered ourselves that basically so many hosts were having issues with Stripe, having maybe their accounts taken down, because of underwriting risk, because the hospitable industry, the hospitality industry, has this kind of big problem. It's high value transactions with a lot of chargebacks. And that is really a bad equation to have, with a 10% cancellation rate, and then transactions that are on average like around $2,000. So that's really a lot. And if you're not managing it pretty well, that can be a big problem. The next thing is that we said we wanted to build is going to come this year. That is marketplace. It takes a village to run a short-term rental. We can build the best possible solution on the software side with all the AI features and the bells and whistles. It's still a very operational business, and operational means boots on the ground. You're going to have cleaners, you're going to have people that needs to be there physically, and we're not achieving the vision of making it trivial to start and profitably run a short-term rental if we don't recognize that skill basically within a product like ours. So we should be able to facilitate those kind of transactions within our own product. The next thing is completely out of whack, completely crazy. But what I feel is that at one point you have so much data, so much understanding of the short-term rental industry as a whole, that while the category may be attractive to real estate investors, it's gonna be a challenging equation to have the upside only by operating a short-term rental property. So there should be a way to allow third parties, people that don't just want to have the investment and not necessarily the operational or the execution risk, to be investing into short-term rental as a category, rather than having to acquire a property and operate it themselves. So that's probably going to be coming a few years from now. We are not in a rush, but the idea then is allow investors to be buying shares of short-term rental properties or property management companies. I don't need to tell you that's obviously a very complicated piece.
Yes, very complicated. If that's where things are headed, very complicated.
Very complicated. So I think the market is not ready yet for something like this. But hey, if you replay that 4 years, 5 years from now, maybe that I'm curious what it would say, what we would say about it.
With all of the data and insight that you have, you're probably best situated to really see what's coming in the short-term rental industry. Do you have any? Do you see any trends or threats or opportunities that our hosts should know about in 2025?
Yeah, I kind of I don't think so, and I think maybe you would have a lot of people on the podcast running software companies telling you that they know everything about the ins and outs of running a property management company or the short-term rental industry. I am not a short-term rental operator anymore. I've stopped this a few years ago. Turns out that screaming in the middle of the night because there was a bug was not exactly the most hospitable of experiences. So I decided to prioritize that. I work in software, so I know there is probably some people, revenue managers, which absolutely die to have access to the data that we do, which we don't share for now. Not interested in developing ancillary revenue like this. But I'm not going to go and elaborate further on this because really it's not my place. I'm here as a software operator. I don't have the arrogance. I have a lot of arrogance, but not that one. I'm humbled by the experience of people that have basically running properties like they do.
What I do find fascinating about kind of the evolution of Hospitable is when I came into this, I was overwhelmed by the amount of tools and technology that I theoretically could sign up for. And every one of those is a Hospitable. Every one of those is a startup software company solving a need in this industry, or they've solved it in a different industry and they're evolving into this industry. You walk any conference and it's a floor full of vendors that are looking for your attention that all do a thing or multiple things. And in our short-term rental secrets mastermind that I'm a part of, I just was overwhelmed by the amount of people that were telling me use this resource or this one or this one or this one. And sometimes you just want to pick a direction and go with it, which is what we chose to do with Hospitable, and we're down that road, right? But I'm seeing other suppliers or other people that are solving other needs that are out there that maybe didn't exist a couple of years ago. And I could see Hospitable looking to try to become, a lot of those things too, right? Where you're talking about adding on experiences and direct bookings. And, we haven't talked about AI on this just yet, but, it's all part of a one-stop shop. Like I listened to your town hall where you're kind of running through what you're planning on doing this year. And it was like thing after thing where I was like, oh my God, if that could be on that platform too, that would be great. That solves that need. Or, oh, I don't have to go find that because they have that thing too. And, like any software company, you can't do it all at the same time, so I'm sure it's unfolding. But it was a fascinating look into where you saw the future going. And I didn't even consider what you just mentioned, which was, valuing companies and potentially buying into these types of things. I mean, that's your 30-year thing, right? But I think it's interesting to see the nimbleness that the company has as you're trying to continue solving things that come up in our business. So I would just want to pay a compliment for that.
Yeah, and originally we didn't want to be any of those things. Let's be clear. Initially, the very clear value proposition for Hospitable was we help you automate your messaging with your guest, period. And that's it. I would have been very happy continuing on that profile, like being the best point provider of that particular problem. I think it's fantastic for marketing because you are communicating this one problem. You have mastered the solution to that pain really well. And that's actually one of the things that we're fighting against as we're basically expanding to more things. Like there's a lot of dilution coming over. Like I was talking to you just about some initiatives driven by a direct team, like control agreements, ID verification, security deposits. That's a lot harder to articulate to an industry like ours. But the reason why we feel like we have to do those things is, first of all, the industry paradigm is still revolving around the connectivity of a property management software. You can only have one of those connected, and it is almost omnipotent on what you can do with your Airbnb or Booking.com properties, just to quote those who not even, just those two, for example. And so that means there is a little bit of freedom that you lose by connecting to property management software. There is a little bit of control that you have to relinquish to that other party. And one other thing, for example, is as you connect Airbnb to a property management software, you lose the ability to have smart pricing. That was one of the big surprises of the work in recent months, is that we discovered that about 48% of our users were relying on smart pricing, Airbnb smart pricing, to be defining their rates on their property, which we thought, like, that's making no sense. I mean, no friend is going to recommend anyone else no one is going to recommend their friends to use Airbnb smart pricing because it's so geared towards the marketplace rather than you as a host. And so that means there are a lot of things that we need to build and expand so that you can have a one turnkey solution that really delivers or has the potential to deliver on the problems that you're going to be facing. And the second order of magnitude of this is that, again, because we want to be working first towards self-managers, people that are working on the side, that are managing a property remotely, they don't have a lot of time to be exploring vendors. They may be, quote, unquote, underqualified. So that means what it means is that the sales organization on those vendors will basically dismiss them entirely. Like, we don't want to work with you guys because it's not efficient for us to do so. No, nothing personal. That basically means we can actually achieve something pretty powerful for our users by leveraging our own relationship with those vendors. And that's one of the things that, for example, when we did a check on Direct and basically what does it take to rebuild all the same features, but for hosts that will be exactly like your size, then you realize it's actually an order of magnitude more expensive than the service fees that we'll be even charging, because you have the payment processing, you have the time to defend on chargeback, sure, you have the discussion about filing, the time that you spend filing, but even the guest verification and the insurance piece are like at least 10 times more expensive if you cannot buy them in bulk at the scale that we are doing. So that means we can leverage our scale to the benefit of users by basically dropping rates by an order of magnitude cheaper, while actually building a solution that works for the self-managers, for the property owners themselves. And if that works for self-managers, that will work even better for the property managers. That's typically what we observe. So there is this kind of industry paradigm about you are the only connectivity provider you guys can get. And no one is building for the self-managers, for the property owners. That actually means there's room for a lot of products to be moving through Hospitable. A lot of features that could be full products outside of Hospitable, and that we can bring to self-managers.
As we start to wrap up, I'm going to throw it over to Rory for any final thoughts that you have for our esteemed guest, PC.
I mean, with the show, we talk a lot to co-hosts and people working in the short-term rental space, but what I'm kind of inspired by your story is outside of that, taking an idea and building a business around it, and then adapting to the way it goes. If you could, reach back and talk to yourself back then, what would you tell yourself, or tell somebody who's right there? They're sitting in their room, maybe they're renting out their couch to somebody, and they have an idea and they want to run with it. What advice would you have for that person?
Yeah, I would say a lot of things. Not all of them on a great podcast where profanity would not be allowed. I think, yeah, I say absolutely, go with it. And especially even now, today, really, I find that there is so much innovation that needs to happen in the space, especially if you want to have a solution around self-managers. That basically you have to go with it, provided that you're honest with yourself, that it's actually a truly differentiated solution and not yet another commoditized feature. And that's going to be eaten away by an OTA, by a property management software that basically would like to expand their scope. And the really interesting thing is that for every startup, for every project, even, it starts, you never know where it's going to end. And as long as you keep hearing about your customers, if you're privileged enough to have some, you can actually uncover more problems that they are having in their day-to-day, that actually you can adjust or pivot towards fixing those problems instead. What really never works is imagining what the world should be like and just having that living in your head. Now is probably a fantastic time for entrepreneurship and innovation, but it makes, because it's so much more accessible, but it makes the argument that needs to be far more brutally honest about what is the value that I actually deliver. Because we're about to have an explosion on the number of apps, integration providers, etc., that literally at one point makes no sense. And there will be a reckoning, because you have lazy arguments being made for features that literally make no sense, or maybe are just hype. And that's one of the things that really I find, been at this for 8 years. I'm not in a position to basically tell everyone what to do, but I've also been pretty disappointed about this industry lack of innovation that was really geared towards a massive adoption across hosts. Not just sales efficient, sales led, but actually delivering value to 5 million hosts that have less than 7 properties, for example, just like ours.
And, frankly, that's who listens to this show. The Smart Stay Show listener are individual operators, people that are not large, property management co-hosting companies. And they're really just looking to figure out how to be better hosts. That was our thesis when we launched Smart Stay Show. We want to try to teach people, from experts like yourself and ourselves at this point. Apparently we're experts now, but we've been Superhost 31 times on Airbnb. So I think we know a little bit about what's going on from the host perspective. We just want to teach people how to do a better job with it. Recently I was at a host community club here in Massachusetts that was run by the official Airbnb, host community group. And I spoke with people of all different types, people that were just getting their first property going, people that were renting out their, individual rooms in their properties, and folks that had, multiple properties. And everyone is at a different point in their journey. And they're all just looking for good information so they could be better hosts for their guests. And so their property can help pay a couple of the bills along the way. That's really what we're all looking to do. It goes back to when you were renting out your room and your couch, you had to, get the bills paid, and you want to have a good experience for your guests. And that's really what we're all looking to do here. So, I do think Hospitable software has super duper helped us along the way, as it has for many other folks in this business. And if you're listening to this and you're one of those hosts that, are not using property management software, and you're an individual host and don't think that you need it, I would say shop around and try to find one that does fit what you're looking for. It might be Hospitable, it might be a different one. We do have a link to a promo code URL that your team has graciously set up for Smart Stay Show listeners. We're not compensated at all by this, but I think you'll get 25% off a couple months of being a new user of Hospitable, and we'll put that in the show notes here. And, it's all an evolution. I mean, we're all just looking to be better at what we're doing. And I'm glad and grateful that there's software like Hospitable's that helps us do that. So thank you for having this idea, and thank you for sharing all of your insights on this show. This has been a delightful conversation.
Thank you so very much. I just hope to remain a little bit clueless a little bit longer to discover new things in this industry. Yes.
And surprisingly, I didn't hear a single cuss word on this. Although we talked about this, you're allowed to curse if you wanted to. You don't have to. So
you told me you wanted that to be polished, so I can be polished.
As you are.
Be the complete opposite if you want me to.
No. That's completely fine. So again, link in the show notes if you want to become a new user of Hospitable. We have a link to str.legal if you're here in Mass or New Hampshire and want some legal advice from Rory. And if you want to be a guest on the show or listen to any of the past episodes, smartstayshow.com is where you will find everything. And if you want to talk to Pierre-Camille Hamana, apparently you can hang out in the Hospitable user group on Facebook and maybe engage in a back and forth with him, which surprisingly actually happens.
Absolutely does, and it does have an impact on the roadmap, just like your exchanges that we had about ID verification as well. You can also send me an email simply to pc@hospitable.com. I'll be forwarding that maybe to the best person in the company to solve it. Hopefully that's not me myself, but if not, then it would be my pleasure to answer any of your questions.
Okay, we'll add that as well. So thank you so much, PC, for joining us, and thank you for listening to Smart Stay Show. We'll see you next time.